As we close this class together, I'd like to do a review for you of what we have covered. I think this is a good time for you to grab your notes and go through your notes as I go through the important things that we've covered in this class. At the end of each one of the modules, as I discuss it, I will try to give you a higher level thinking question that maybe you can use to give more thought to the material that's been covered in this class and how you might use it in a real world scenario. In our opening week of the class, we looked at course delivery and we defined the words of synchronous and asynchronous. And you've seen those words reappear throughout the course. Next, we looked at the theories behind the importance of presence in the classroom. And you have an entire textbook dedicated to this topic. So it really is an important one. Then later on in that same week, we looked at the demographics of some of our students. And those terms, the demographics of our students and the backgrounds and culture of our students, appeared again later in the class. So we really need to get to know our students, understand their culture, their background, and know what they bring to the class. All of that was important in week 1. If you know the culture, the background, the goals, and the demographics of your students, does it make it easier for you to interact with them? Week 2 talked about teaching and learning in the online environment. And it also went into the theories and the research of people like Moore, Webmenecker, that's hard to say, and also Peters. We looked at the industrialization of education. That industrialization that Peters wrote about made the change for online education to happen. It allowed the teacher to become not the main focus of the class. It showed how the teacher can become the sage on the stage and not the person who is the number one in the learning experience. In that role change that Peters wrote about, we see that there's a division of labor. And for the first time in education, the division of labor was between the instructor and the student. And this movement began to move us closer to student-centered learning. Think about how the role of the instructor changed at this time in the history of education. Suddenly, the instructor was sharing the communication of knowledge with the students. In week 3, we looked at the importance of interaction and techniques for keeping the student focused. Both are important in course facilitation. Week 3 really is an important week. This is really the foundation for this entire course. We looked at the importance of presence and timely feedback. And that was then tied in to the beginning of the building of the learning community, which is so important in distance education. Addressing the needs of our students means that we have to get to know them as individuals, but then we also have to see them more collectively as contributing members of the learning community. In this week, through our readings, we learned the importance of the instructor becoming a part of that learning community. That is done, we learned, through sharing your own experiences and your own background with the students. Remember, they want to know that you're a real person and that you're approachable. I might want to share my one slogan with you one more time. I feel that it is my only job to make my students successful. I really enjoyed this week, and the reason is we had several interesting videos. We looked at the habits of highly successful people and then related those to the habits of highly successful professors. I hope you got some ideas from that. The next video we have was something called Shift Happens. And this looked at how our world is changing and how this may be a precursor to advancements in distance education. This week also focused on the importance of presence and interaction, especially in the beginning weeks of the class. Students are a little apprehensive when they first join a class, and they need to know exactly where they stand. This was another important week for us because we had a couple of very interesting topics. We looked at the difference between teacher-centered and student-centered. And this goes back again to the work of John Dewey, which we had addressed earlier in the course. We then looked at facilitating a course and the ways that you might do that, which included for us the announcement and also the rubric, which you created both. So there's other ways of facilitating a course, and we covered many topics in this week. When you facilitate a course or make it easier for students, oftentimes you have to change up the assignments. And that's what happened this week. You got to use your own creativity with an article that you chose, and then to develop your own announcement and your own rubric. In week 7, we learned that ending the class in a professional manner is as important as the beginning of the class. We looked at several ways that courses are reviewed and how that data that's gathered can help to improve the class in the future. As you approach the end of a course, it's also important to watch for signs of student fatigue. And we talked about signs, what you might watch for, and also how to help overcome those. In the final week of the class, it's important to keep students focused and keep their motivation high. Many students are worried or tired. They know they're facing a final project, which is probably due within a couple of days, or even a final exam. It's important to give them some step-by-step instructions to help them focus what needs to be done, and often a timeline so they know that they have enough time to complete the course successfully.